Dark fantasy. It's far more than just a category of storytelling. It's a generational nostalgic setting that captivates almost anyone who experiences it. Hello there, dear viewer. My name is Lupo, and I'm a dark fantasy artist. Today I'll be talking about dark fantasy. While I ramble on about my obsessions with it, I hope you enjoy watching the drawing process for my piece, The Creature. If you simply search for dark fantasy, you'll find a definition like this. And of course, that's accurate. It's a solid explanation of what dark fantasy is, but it doesn't capture the full experience that a dark fantasy artwork, movie, or book gives you. You'll often read that the dark fantasy should have certain elements: grit, doubt, decay, and the struggles of its characters. All of that is true. There's one element that's often overlooked, maybe because it's subtle, or because it happens in the background without us realizing it. That element is relatability. We connect to the characters when we see our own struggles reflected in them, even subconsciously. A great example of this is Guts from Berserk. He's the perfect dark fantasy protagonist, a tragic hero carrying unbearable struggles, with just enough edginess to make him iconic. Readers relate to him, not just because of his strength, but also because of his moments of weaknesses, like when he simply rests against a dead tree in front of a sunset. Even in a grim and violent world, that moment feels deeply human and comforting. And this brings me to another key element of dark fantasy that definitions rarely mention: timelessness. Even though most dark fantasy stories take place in medieval-inspired worlds, their struggles feel real, because, in a symbolic sense, we've lived them. Whether it's heartbreak, daily stress, family problems, or loss, these themes are universal. That's why these stories remain relatable across time periods, even with monsters, magic, and fantastical settings. I realized this when I showed one of my own stories to a friend. Without any artwork or context, they connected with the protagonist's struggles right away. Later, when I revealed the dark fantasy setting, they didn't find it out of place. Instead, they felt it enhanced what was already a timeless and relatable experience. So how does one actually write or create a dark fantasy story? Of course, there isn't one simple answer, but here are some guiding points I follow myself. Relatability works especially well for protagonists, but it doesn't have to be the hero. You can also make your villain relatable, or morally just, in their own way. Timelessness is key. Your story should feel believable and human, even in a fantastical world. Don't worry if your story doesn't feel dark enough. Dark fantasy isn't just about despair. It can also be comforting, motivating, or inspiring. Ultimately, don't let these ideas limit you. Instead, they open doors for creativity and allow your unique vision to come to shine. You might now be wondering, okay, but how do I actually draw in a dark fantasy style? Here's the thing, you already know about half of it. Why? Because the story is the most important part of any artwork. Art is just storytelling in a visual form. Once you understand the story, the style comes naturally. From my own studies and practices, here are a few things I've noticed about dark fantasy art. It rarely uses black or pure white. Blacks are often slightly lighter, and whites slightly darker. Colors are usually muted or pastel, with only one or two elements standing out in brighter tones to guide the viewer's eye. Shadows are heavy and dramatic, even in settings where you'd expect softer lighting. This creates mood, tension, and focus. Dark fantasy art often focuses on just one or two main subjects, sometimes a character, sometimes an environment. If you're looking for inspiration, you can study works from Berserk, Game of Thrones, to Lord of the Rings, Vermilion, or even classic fantasy RPGs. And of course, you can also look at my own art for examples of these techniques. Feel free to share your dark fantasy art with me. I'd love to see what you're working on. You can send it to me via TikTok DMs. The link is in the description below. Thank you. To be completely honest, I haven't been drawing dark fantasy for very long. I used to draw all kinds of characters, like this soldier sketch I made some time ago. Back then, I was more focused on manga and comics. My interest in dark fantasy really started with those AI-generated dark fantasy versions of video game characters, like Minecraft in dark fantasy style. If you'd like to watch the full video of The Creature, complete with the story behind it, please check out my TikTok. Enjoy the rest of the drawing process. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and Godspeed.